The crash and the observers. The emergency klaxon screamed through the cockpit of the Iron Phoenix as Captain Marcus Rodriguez fought to keep his cargo vessel from becoming a crater in the jungle below. Red warning lights painted his weathered face in harsh angles as he wrestled with controls that responded like they were filled with molasses. "Come on, baby, don't quit on me now," Mac muttered through gritted teeth, his calloused hands flying over the instrument panel. The fusion drive had cut out without warning 3 minutes ago, leaving him with nothing but emergency thrusters and gravity to guide his descent toward the green hell of Kepler-44. To be. The Iron Phoenix had been his home for 8 years. Ever since he'd left the Colonial Defense Corps and bought the aging cargo hauler with his discharge bonus. She wasn't pretty, with her patched hull and jury-rigged systems, but she'd never let him down. Until now, through the viewport, the jungle rushed up to meet him. Massive trees stretched toward the sky like ancient pillars, their trunks easily 100 meters in diameter. Mac had maybe 30 seconds to find a clearing, or he'd be decorating one of those giants with scrap metal and his own remains. There, a gap in the canopy, maybe just wide enough. Mac rolled the ship hard to port, feeling the artificial gravity fluctuate as the generators struggled to compensate. The Phoenix clipped the top of an enormous tree, sending a shower of alien wood and leaves cascading around them. The ship shuddered, groaned, and then hit the ground with a bone-jarring crash that threw Mac against his restraints. Silence. The first thing Mac noticed was the silence. No more alarms, no more engine noise, just the gentle tick of cooling metal, and his own ragged breathing. He ran a quick mental inventory. Arms moved, legs worked, vision clear. The crash webbing had done its job. "Well, Mac," he said to himself, a habit he'd picked up during long solo runs, "you've been in worse spots." That wasn't entirely true, but optimism had kept him alive through 2 colonial wars and countless technical disasters. No point in abandoning it now. The ship's systems were mostly dead, but emergency power kept life support running. Mac's diagnostic pad showed the fusion drive was completely fried. The main computer core was offline, and the communication array had been sheared off during the impact. On the positive side, the hull was intact, and he still had atmosphere. Mac pulled himself from the pilot's chair and began his damage assessment. The cargo hold was a mess. Shipping containers had broken free from their restraints and scattered across the deck. Fortunately, his cargo was mostly agricultural equipment bound for the outer colonies. Nothing explosive or toxic, just spare parts and machinery. It took Mac 3 hours to work his way through the ship, cataloging what was salvageable. The fusion drive was beyond his ability to repair without a full shipyard, but the emergency fusion cell might give him enough power to get basic systems online. The real problem was the navigation computer. Without it, even if he could repair the drive, he'd never find his way back to the shipping lanes. As evening approached, Mac made his way outside to survey the external damage. The Phoenix had carved a deep furrow through the jungle floor before coming to rest against a cluster of the massive trees. The ship's hull was scarred and dented, but structurally sound. What caught his attention, however, was the forest itself. The trees were unlike anything in the colonial databases. Their bark had a metallic sheen that seemed to shift and ripple in the dying light. The leaves, if they could be called that, looked more like delicate silver circuits than vegetation. And everything was too quiet. No insects, no bird calls, no rustling in the underbrush, just an oppressive silence that made Mac's skin crawl. He set up a basic perimeter around the ship, using motion sensors from his emergency kit. It wasn't much, but it would warn him if any large predators decided to investigate the crash site. Then he retreated inside the Phoenix and sealed the hatch. First rule of survival: secure your position before you worry about anything else. Mac spent the night planning his repair strategy. He had emergency rations for 2 weeks, maybe 3 if he was careful. The ship's water recycler was still functional, so that wasn't an immediate concern. The real issue was tools and spare parts. He'd need to cannibalize non-essential systems to have any hope of getting the critical ones working. When he woke the next morning, Mac found his first surprise. The motion sensors had detected movement during the night, but when he checked the recordings, he saw nothing. The sensors showed clear activation timestamps, but the video feeds were empty. Either the sensors were malfunctioning, or something had moved through his perimeter without triggering the optical pickups. Max spent the day working on the power systems. The emergency fusion cell was designed to run life support for a week, but by rerouting power through the backup conduits, he might be able to get the main computer online long enough to assess the navigation damage. It was delicate work, requiring him to splice power cables and bypass burned-out circuit boards as he worked. Mac couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Several times he caught movement in his peripheral vision, but when he turned to look, he saw nothing but the strange metallic trees swaying in the breeze. The silence was getting to him, he decided. Human beings weren't meant to live in such absolute quiet. That evening, Mac made his second discovery. The fusion coupling he'd been working on all day, a component that should have taken him at least another day to repair, was finished. Not just finished, but improved. The modifications were subtle but brilliant. Whoever had done the work had used techniques Mac had never seen before. The power efficiency was increased by at least 30%. Mac stared at the coupling for a long time, his mind racing. He was alone on an uninhabited planet, or so the survey reports had claimed. Either those reports were wrong, or something had taken an interest in his repair work. Something with technology far beyond human capabilities. He decided to run an experiment. That night, Mac deliberately left his diagnostic pad outside the ship, along with a set of micro-tools and a damaged power relay. If something was helping him, he wanted to know what it was capable of. The next morning, the power relay was not only repaired but enhanced. The diagnostic pad showed energy readings that shouldn't have been possible with human technology, and the micro-tools had been arranged in a perfect geometric pattern that definitely wasn't random. Max stood in the morning light, staring at the evidence that he was not alone. His military training warred with his engineer's curiosity. The tactical part of his mind screamed that he should arm himself and prepare for contact. But the engineer in him was fascinated by the elegant solutions to problems that had been stumping him for days. "Okay," he said aloud, his voice carrying in the still air. "I know you're out there. I know you're helping me. I don't know why, but I appreciate it." He paused, feeling slightly foolish for talking to empty air. "If you want to talk, I'm listening. If you want to keep helping in secret, that's fine too. But I thought you should know, I'm not going to stop working on my ship. It's what I do." High above, in the canopy, beings older than human civilization watched the strange creature below. The Valthara had been observing this world for over 2 million years, hidden within the vast network of trees that were more than they appeared. They were refugees from a dying galaxy, survivors of a catastrophe that had consumed their homeworlds eons ago. The trees were their ships, their homes, their bodies. The Veilthara had learned to merge with their technology, so completely that the distinction between organic and artificial had become meaningless. They were living forests, thinking ecosystems, consciousness distributed across millions of interconnected nodes. For millennia, they had watched younger races discover their worlds, explore them, and move on. They had learned to remain hidden, to observe without interfering. But this human was different. Where others had despaired at the extent of their ship's damage, this Marcus Rodriguez had simply rolled up his sleeves and begun the impossible task of repair. The Veilthara had been intrigued by his determination. They had watched him work with primitive tools, solving problems through intuition and stubbornness rather than advanced technology. And when they had begun to help, leaving subtle improvements to his repairs, the human had not fled in terror or assumed divine intervention. He had simply adapted, accepted the help, and continued working. Council Singer Vethalana, eldest of the Veilthara on this world, pulsed a query through the network. The human's cognitive patterns were unlike anything in their extensive databases, where most intelligent species followed predictable problem-solving algorithms. This creature seemed to approach each challenge from completely unexpected angles. "He does not think like us," whispered Minekeeper Threndel, who had been observing the human's work most closely. "He sees connections we would miss, solutions we would not consider. His mind is chaotic, but brilliantly so." "And dangerous," added Warsinger Kethmori, ever cautious. "His species has a reputation for aggression and unpredictability. We have observed their conflicts, their tendency toward violence." Council Singer Vethalana considered this. The humans were indeed a warlike species, but this individual had shown no aggressive tendencies. Instead, he had displayed patience, creativity, and an almost childlike curiosity about the improvements to his ship. Perhaps it was time to take a more direct approach. "I will make contact," Kethmori declared, surprising the others. As Warsinger, he was normally the most cautious about revealing their presence. "If this human proves hostile, I am best equipped to defend the grove." The decision rippled through the network, debated by thousands of voices in microseconds. Finally, consensus emerged. Contact would be made, but carefully. The human had earned the right to know who had been helping him, but the survival of the grove took precedence over everything else. As Mac worked on the navigation computer the next day, he noticed the trees around his ship had changed. The metallic bark seemed more active, rippling with patterns of light that pulsed in rhythm with something he couldn't identify. The silence of the forest had been replaced by a subtle humming, like the sound of distant machinery. When he stepped outside for a break, Mac found a gift waiting for him. A device unlike anything in human technology sat on a tree stump near his ship. It was clearly artificial, but it seemed to grow from the organic material of the stump itself. The craftsmanship was exquisite, with flowing lines that suggested both advanced engineering and natural beauty. As Mac approached the device, it activated. A holographic display materialized above it, showing a three-dimensional representation of his ship. But this wasn't just a scan, it was a complete blueprint, showing every system, every damaged component, every potential repair. More than that, it showed improvements, modifications that would make the Iron Phoenix perform beyond its original specifications. "Incredible," Mac breathed, studying the display. The technology was centuries ahead of anything humans had developed, but the solutions it proposed were elegant and achievable with the materials at hand. "Whoever you are, you really know your stuff." The display changed, showing a new image. A figure emerged from the hologram, tall and graceful, with features that seemed to shift between organic and mechanical. When it spoke, the words formed directly in Mac's mind rather than through his ears. "Greetings, Marcus Rodriguez. I am Keth Mori of the Velthara. We have been watching you work, and we are impressed. Your kind thinks differently than we do, and in that difference, we see great potential. Will you accept our help in repairing your vessel?" Mac stared at the holographic figure, his mind racing. First contact with an alien species, and it was happening in the middle of nowhere on a planet that was supposed to be uninhabited. But as he looked at the being's representation, he saw no hostility, no threat, just curiosity and what seemed like genuine respect. "I'd be honored," Mac replied, hoping his voice would carry to whatever sensors were recording this conversation. "But I have to ask, why? Help me. What do you want in return?" The figure's features shifted in what might have been a smile. "Want to learn, Marcus Rodriguez. Your mind works in ways ours cannot. Perhaps together we can achieve things neither of our species could accomplish alone." As the sun set over the alien forest, Mac realized that his emergency landing had become something far more significant than a simple survival story. He had become humanity's first ambassador to a species that had been watching the galaxy for millions of years, and tomorrow the real work would begin. Contact and revelation, the morning after first contact. Mac woke to find his ship surrounded by what could only be described as a living workshop. The trees themselves had extended branches and tendrils that interfaced directly with the Iron Phoenix's hull, creating a seamless connection between organic and artificial systems. The sight should have been terrifying, but Mac found himself oddly comforted by the gentle pulsing of lights that flowed through the biomechanical network. Keth Mori materialized beside the ship as Mac emerged from the hatch. In daylight, the Velthara appeared even more remarkable than the holographic representation had suggested. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, his form was an elegant fusion of crystalline structures and flowing organic curves. His skin, if it could be called that, had the appearance of living metal that shifted between silver and deep green depending on the angle of light. "Good morning, Marcus Rodriguez." Keth Mori's voice resonated directly in Mac's mind, accompanied by harmonics that felt almost musical. "I trust you slept well despite the magnitude of our revelation." Mac chuckled, running a hand through his graying hair. "I've slept worse after less shocking news. Though I have to admit, waking up to find my ship connected to a living forest takes some getting used to. The grove extends its hospitality," Keth Mori replied, gesturing toward the network of connected trees. "Your vessel is now part of our greater consciousness, but only temporarily and with your permission. We are sharing diagnostic information and repair capabilities, nothing more." Mac walked around his ship, marveling at the seamless integration. The damage from the crash was already being repaired by some process he couldn't begin to understand. Hull breaches were sealing themselves with what appeared to be living metal, and the twisted wreckage of his communication array was being reconstructed by delicate tendrils that moved with surgical precision. "This is incredible," Mac said, kneeling beside one of the repair sites. "Your technology is so far beyond ours that I can barely comprehend what I'm seeing. But I have to ask, if you've been watching the galaxy for millions of years, why haven't you made contact with other species before?" Keth Mori's features shifted in what Mac was beginning to recognize as expressions of emotion. "We have, on rare occasions, but most species we encounter follow predictable patterns of development. They discover, they catalog, they move on. Some become aggressive when faced with superior technology. Others become dependent, losing their drive to innovate, and humans are different. You are, Kethmori confirmed. Yesterday, I watched. You approach a damaged power coupling with tools that were barely adequate for the task. Instead of despairing, you found 17 different ways to attempt the repair. When conventional methods failed, you created new ones. Your mind leaps to solutions that would never occur to us. Mac felt a flush of pride at the compliment, but also a nagging concern. What happened to the other species you contacted? The ones who didn't work out? They continued their natural development, Kethmori replied. But Mac detected something in the mental harmonics that suggested a more complex truth. We learned to observe without interfering. It is better for all concerned. Before Mac could pursue that line of questioning further, the forest around them began to change. The trees shifted and reconfigured themselves, creating a clearing with naturally formed amphitheater. At the center, a structure emerged from the ground part, building, part living organism, with walls that seemed to breathe and pulse with internal light. The council wishes to meet you, Kethmori explained. This is unprecedented. Council Singer Vethalana has not spoken directly to an alien species in over 50,000 years. Mac followed Kethmori into the structure, which felt more like walking inside a living creature than entering a building. The walls were warm to the touch and seemed to respond to his presence, glowing more brightly as he passed. The interior was vast, with a domed ceiling that showed not the sky above, but what appeared to be a real-time display of the galaxy itself. 3 figures waited in the center of the space. Each was unique, their forms adapted to different functions. Within Vale Thara society, Council Singer Vethalana was the most striking, ancient beyond measure. Her crystalline form shot through with veins of pure light that pulsed in complex patterns. Mindkeeper Threndel appeared more organic, his surface covered in constantly shifting geometric patterns that Mac realized were actual thoughts made visible. The third figure introduced himself as Grove Shaper Meltham, and his form seemed to be composed entirely of the same living metal that was repairing Mac's ship. Welcome, Marcus of the human species. Vethalana's mental voice carried harmonics of vast age and wisdom. We have observed your kind for only a brief time in our existence, but you have proven most intriguing. Your ship carries records of human achievement that surprise us. You've been reading my files. Mac asked, not sure whether to be impressed or concerned. Only the technical specifications and historical records, Threndel assured him. We do not intrude upon personal privacy without consent, but your species' rate of technological advancement is remarkable. In less than 1,000 years, you have progressed from primitive metallurgy to interstellar travel, and you've been watching from the trees all this time, Mac said, pieces clicking together in his mind. How many worlds do you inhabit? Thousands, Grove Shaper, Meltham replied. We fled our dying galaxy 2 million years ago, seeking new homes. We found them, but we also found something unexpected, younger species with potential we had not anticipated. Your galaxy is rich, with life, with diversity of thought and approach that our own civilization had lost. Vethalana's form pulsed with what Mac interpreted as sadness. We achieved great things, Marcus of the humans. We mastered space and time, bent matter to our will, became one with our technology. But in doing so, we lost something essential. We became efficient, predictable, stagnant. We solved problems through overwhelming technological superiority rather than creativity and innovation. And that's why you're interested in me, Mac realized. Not because of human technology, but because of how humans think. Precisely, Kethmori confirmed. Yesterday, you solved a power distribution problem that had been limiting the efficiency of your ship's systems. The solution was so elegant, in its simplicity, that it took our greatest minds several hours to understand why it worked. You accomplished in minutes what would have taken us days of calculation. Mac felt a mix of pride and incredulity. I just rerouted some power cables. It wasn't exactly rocket science. To us, it was, Threndel said. We would have analyzed every possible configuration, run thousands of simulations, tested each variable in isolation. You looked at the problem, understood the underlying principles, and found a solution that required no complex analysis. Your intuition guided you to the correct answer. The implications were staggering. Mac began to understand why the Veilthara had taken such an interest in him. They weren't just advanced, they were too advanced. Their technology had become so sophisticated that it had replaced the need for creative thinking, for the kind of innovative problem-solving that humans took for granted. So what happens now? Mac asked. You fix my ship, I go home, and we pretend this never happened. We hope not, Vethalana replied. We have a proposition for you, Marcus of the humans. Your ship's repairs are nearly complete, enhanced far beyond its original specifications. You could return to your cargo runs, your routine existence, or you could stay and help us with a greater challenge. The chamber around them shifted, and Mac found himself looking at a holographic display of unprecedented complexity. It showed star systems, trade routes, and what appeared to be a vast network of hidden installations throughout the galaxy. We face a problem that our technology cannot solve, Grove Shaper Meltham explained. A remnant of our old enemy has followed us to this galaxy. They are called the Devourers, and they consume worlds not for resources, but for the knowledge and life force they contain. We have been tracking their approach for centuries, but our predictive models all lead to the same conclusion: they will find and destroy every inhabited world in this galaxy. Our weapons are more powerful than theirs, Kethmori added. Our defenses are impenetrable, but they adapt, they learn, they become more efficient with each encounter. We can defeat them in battle, but we cannot outsmart them. They think like us logically, predictably, systematically. Max studied the display, his mind racing. But humans don't think like that. We're chaotic, unpredictable. We take risks that don't make sense mathematically. Exactly, Vethalana confirmed. We believe that human intuition, human creativity, could provide the unpredictable element necessary to defeat the Devourers permanently. But we would need more than one human. We would need a partnership between our species. The weight of the decision settled on Mac's shoulders. He was being asked to become more than just a contact with an alien species. He was being asked to help save the galaxy. The rational part of his mind screamed that this was beyond any one person's capability. But the engineer in him, the part that had spent his life solving impossible problems, was already considering the challenge. What exactly are you proposing? He asked. Return to human space, Threndel explained. Share what you have learned. But carefully. We know your species' tendency toward fear and aggression when faced with the unknown. Select individuals who can think creatively, who can approach problems from unexpected angles. Bring them back here for training and integration. With our technology, a human Veilthara hybrid force, Mac mused. Combining your technology with human unpredictability. More than that, Vethalana said, a new form of consciousness, a merger of intuitive and logical thinking that neither species could achieve alone. You would be the first, the prototype for a new kind of cooperation. Mac walked to the edge of the chamber, looking out at the forest that was so much more than it appeared. In the distance, he could see his ship, now gleaming with alien enhancements, ready to carry him back to his old life. But could he go back to running cargo after this? Could he return to the routine of space trucking when he had glimpsed something so much larger? "There's something else," he said, turning back to the Veilthara. "Something you haven't told me. Why me specifically? You could have made contact with human governments, with scientists, with military leaders. Why a washed-up cargo pilot?" Kethmori's expression shifted to what Mac now recognized as respect. "Because you do not think like your leaders. Politicians seek power. Scientists seek knowledge. Military commanders seek victory. You seek solutions. When faced with a broken ship, you do not despair or assign blame. You simply begin fixing it. That is what we need." Also, Groveshaper Meltham added, with what might have been humor, "You are already here. You have seen our true nature, and you have not fled in terror or tried to exploit us for personal gain. These are surprisingly rare qualities." Mac laughed. Despite himself, "So I'm qualified because I'm not running away screaming." "Among other reasons," Vethalana confirmed, "but the choice is yours, Marcus of the humans. We will not coerce you, and we will not prevent you from leaving if that is your decision. Your ship is repaired and enhanced. It will serve you well for many years. But if you choose to stay, to help us prepare for what is coming, you will be part of something greater than either of our species has ever attempted." Mac looked around the chamber, at the alien faces watching him with expressions he was only beginning to understand. He thought of his old life, the comfortable routine, of cargo runs and port calls, the simple satisfaction of keeping an aging ship running. Then he thought of the Devourers, of the threat to every inhabited world in the galaxy, and of the possibility that human creativity combined with Veilthara technology might be the key to stopping them. "I'll need to think about this," Mac said. "Finally, it's a big decision." "Of course," Vethalana agreed. "Take all the time you need. But while you consider, perhaps you would like to see what we have accomplished together already." The chamber shifted around them, and Mac found himself looking at a perfect fusion of human and Veilthara technology. His ship's fusion drive had been enhanced beyond recognition, its efficiency increased by orders of magnitude. The navigation computer now interfaced directly with the Veilthara network, capable of calculating jump routes that would have been impossible before. Most remarkably, the ship's AI had been upgraded to something approaching true consciousness, a hybrid of human programming and Veilthara neural architecture. "This is what we can accomplish in a single night," Threndel explained. "Imagine what we could achieve with years of cooperation, with teams of humans and Veilthara working together." Max studied the enhanced systems, his engineer's mind marveling at the elegant solutions to problems he hadn't even known existed. This wasn't just repair work, it was transformation, evolution, the creation of something entirely new from the marriage of two different approaches to technology. "I don't need to think about it," Mac said suddenly. "I'm in. Whatever you need, however I can help, I'm with you." "Are you certain?" Kethmori asked. "This path cannot be undone. Once you commit to this course, you will be changed as much as your ship has been. You will become something new, something that has never existed before." Mac grinned, feeling more alive than he had in years. "Kethmori, I've been a soldier, a pilot, and a mechanic. But I've never been part of something that could save the galaxy. How could I pass up an opportunity like that?" The Veilthara's response was a harmonic symphony that Mac felt in his bones, a sound of joy and hope that seemed to resonate through the entire forest. As he stood in the alien chamber, surrounded by beings older than human civilization, Mac realized that his emergency landing had been the beginning of something extraordinary. He had crashed into the forest as a simple cargo pilot, but he would leave it as the first human Veil-Thera hybrid, the prototype for a new kind of cooperation that might be the galaxy's only hope. The Iron Phoenix would carry him home one last time, but when he returned to this hidden world, he would bring others with him. Together, they would prepare for the coming storm, and they would face it with the combined strengths of two species: the ancient wisdom and technology of the Veil, and the chaotic, unpredictable, brilliant creativity of humanity.